You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Hey everyone, I'm your host Will, and you're listening to One Good Scare, where we explore our favorite horror movies. I know it's been a while, it's been a hectic couple of months with holidays, work, school schedules, just life, but we're back at it this week with 2 episodes with 2 amazing guests. And I promise you'll love today's guest, Star, host of the terrific Creepy Shit podcast, and today's movie, The Craft, from 1996. Before we dive in, I wanted to give a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First, I've been working to try and figure out the best way to produce the show. I love doing the scene-by-scene narration with the handful of cut-ins and special guests and all of that. But honestly, it's been a bit of a recipe for burnout, and I definitely want to avoid that as much as possible. So moving forward, here's what I think will give me the best balance, so that I can bring you weekly episodes consistently. Part 1 will include a synopsis of the movie. It won't be scene by scene, but it won't be a flyby either. I'll hit the high points of the film and do my best to narrate it straight through without any cut-ins. Then, after the synopsis, I'll focus in on a few themes, plot points, maybe a few did you knows, all the things that I love and probably you love about movies. And then from there, we'll dive right into the guest discussion, though this won't be in every episode. Scheduling can be really difficult, and honestly more than once I've had some technical difficulties that have forced me either to delay or scrap an interview altogether. No matter what, I am committed to bringing you the best in horror movies every week in 2026. Now remember, my goal with One Good Scare is to enhance your viewing experience, not replace it. But the show also serves as a sort of visual aid for your mind's eye. So if you prefer to listen than watch, I absolutely appreciate that. Just know though, One Good Scare is essentially one gigantic spoiler. Alright, now that I've cleared all of that up, let's dive into what I think is a terrific horror movie, and one that I hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. The Craft. The Craft, directed by Andrew Fleming and starring Neve Campbell, Fairuza Balk, Rachel True, Robin Tunney, and Skeet Ulrich, is a supernatural coming-of-age horror movie that mixes witchcraft, teen bullying, and an interesting theme of choices and consequences. And it's surprisingly dark, considering the movie takes place in high school, and much of the soundtrack is more upbeat 90s rock. The movie opens with Sarah, a quiet teenager who moves to LA with her father and stepmother, and begins attending a Catholic high school. Initially, she struggles to fit in, but when Bonnie sees her balancing a pencil on its point and spinning it hands-free, she becomes convinced that Sarah is the missing piece of their coven. At the same time, Sarah catches the eye of popular jock Chris and draws the ire of the bully Laura, who immediately targets the group and spreads gossip and tries to manipulate for social dominance. As Sarah is introduced to Bonnie, Nancy, and Rochelle, she discovers they dabble in witchcraft and worship an ancient deity, Manon, who is described as, quote, the stadium if God and the devil played a game of football, end quote. The 4 are an interesting mix of personalities and experience their own form of marginalization. Nancy is volatile and unpredictable and comes from a difficult home life, an abusive stepfather, and an emotionally unavailable mother. Bonnie is intelligent but insecure, and is hiding what appears to be burns on her back and shoulder. Rochelle, as the only black student at the school, experiences unrelenting racial harassment from Laura. And Sarah, having survived a suicide attempt, has recurring nightmares, and may have hidden and unharnessed psychic abilities. When Bonnie, Nancy, and Rochelle realize Sarah possesses some kind of supernatural talent, they welcome her into the group. And with the group complete, they begin taking magic more seriously. Initially, they cast spells to help empower their lives and overcome their insecurities. Bonnie casts a spell to heal her scars. Sarah casts a spell to make others love her more, including Chris. Rochelle casts a spell to punish Laura for her racism, and Nancy invokes all the powers of Manon. And the effects of the spells work almost immediately. Chris is more attentive to Sarah, almost too attentive. Bonnie's scars are healed. Laura's hair begins to fall out, satisfying Rochelle, who experienced racism associated with her hair. And Nancy's abusive stepfather dies mysteriously and leaves her and her mother nearly $200,000 in life insurance. But things grow increasingly scarier and darker. Nancy grows more aggressive and believes magic can be used to gain dominance over others, and she believes Manon has chosen her specifically. Sarah, by contrast, becomes more concerned with how magic is being used, and especially when Chris becomes overbearing and aggressive. As he becomes more attached, Sarah tries to detach herself from him completely, but he attempts to sexually assault her as he feels she belongs to him. Terrified, Sarah tries to reverse the spell, but before she can, Chris dies after falling from a window, and it's implied that Nancy's magic caused it. Chris's death is a turning point for Sarah, who realizes that Nancy is dangerous and out of control. And this is confirmed when she confronts her, and Nancy reacts aggressively and accuses Sarah of betraying the coven. The fracturing deepens when Rochelle and Bonnie side with Nancy. They too fear losing their newfound power and don't care about the moral obligation or consequences. Things only get worse as Nancy's instability escalates, and soon she becomes convinced she and Manon are one. Then she turns on Sarah, tormenting her dreams and causing violent hallucinations, which push Sarah to the brink. Sarah has visions of suicide, causing her grasp on reality to slip. Then, tragedy strikes. Sarah's stepmother dies in a plane crash, leaving Sarah alone. And it's heavily implied that Nancy caused the accident that claimed her life. With Sarah now considered a traitor, Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle attempt to strip Sarah of her powers and conduct a ritual meant to break her connection to magic. But Sarah survives and seeks solace from a local shop owner who practices true, balanced magic. The owner, Lirio, reaffirms Sarah is a natural witch who was born with unusual powers and is set apart from the others who are simply invoking magical power. She teaches Sarah several spells and encourages her to face Nancy rather than run away from her. As the movie reaches its climax, Sarah returns to the beach where they initially invoked Manon, and Nancy attacks her with powerful magic. But Sarah is protected. Filled with rage, Nancy invokes Manon again, but this time she cannot contain the spirit's power, and Sarah ultimately defeats Nancy and binds her powers permanently, leaving her mentally broken. As the movie closes, we see Nancy is institutionalized and violent. Bonnie's scars return to her back and shoulder, and Rochelle loses her confidence once again. Sarah, however, appears stronger, and she retains her powers and uses them ethically and responsibly. The closing scene shows Sarah floating calmly in her bedroom, fully in control and no longer overwhelmed or led by revenge or her insecurities. And the craft has come to an end. Alright, so let's explore a couple of themes before jumping into our guest discussion. Right off the bat, the movie forces us to consider identity, insecurities, and self-acceptance. Each of the four leads has some sort of struggle or insecurity. Body image, race, depression, and poverty. And each has trauma attached to these struggles. I'll admit that this may be a bit of a stretch, but considering these issues, magic almost seems like a metaphor for control and power. Listen, I'm as human as the next person, and I know the struggle with battling your insecurities and fighting to gain some measure of control over them. And the movie forces us to ask ourselves this question: what would I do to not have to deal with this shit anymore? When framed that way, I feel like the concept of magic and invoking outside help allows the girls to experience that power and freedom. But that leads to what I think is the second most prominent theme: revenge and consequences. The movie depicts not only internal struggles, but also external, specifically with Nancy and Sarah, who grow into rivals as the movie progresses. Sarah wants to use magic in ethical, moral, and responsible ways, and Nancy simply wants to use it for her own benefit, even and maybe especially at the expense of others. There's an underlying karmic idea attached to its use, as if the movie is reminding us, what goes around comes around. And there's something else, and it may be a bit of a sensitive subject, so I really want to tread lightly. The Craft is a sort of cautionary tale that explores how power rooted in pain can be corruptive, if we're not careful. Again, with magic as a metaphor for power, it's as if the movie tells us that magic/power is not inherently good or bad. In that sense, it's amoral. It's how we wield magic and power that determines whether or not it will consume us. Another way to look at it is that we are responsible for ourselves, even amidst the trauma we've endured. An interesting example of this is the series finale of Stranger Things. There's a scene where Will tells Henry/Vecna/8/Mr. Watson that he was a pawn who was used by the Mind Flayer, and that despite all the things he's done to that point, he can resist him now and fight back. And Henry/Vecna/8/Mr. Watson essentially says, "No, I chose evil, and evil chose me." And I think there's something important and sobering in this. Because sometimes people who have been hurt and traumatized don't choose a path of healing or wholeness. Instead, they choose to inflict pain, born out of the pain they've suffered. In its own way, The Craft seems to be orienting us to that line of thinking. Of course, other themes include female friendship, both the empowerment and the tragic breakdown. And I mentioned at the start that I hadn't seen this movie in nearly 20 years, and I think I was 12 when it released. And watching it recently, I really appreciated these secondary themes. I'll talk a little bit more about that with my special guest, and you guessed it, it's time to pivot into the guest discussion, and I think you're gonna love it.
This Friday, Greenland 2 is making an impact across the globe.
Hang on!
Audiences rave. It's deeply emotional and better than the first.
I wanted you beginning first, Bob.
You'll be holding your breath from start to finish.
Oh my God! Grab onto something!
Greenland 2, Migration, rated PG-13.
The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. Your info is in endless places that could expose you to identity theft, leading to lost funds. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
I have Star in the studio, quote unquote. We're at a distance, right? We're recording on Riverside. But guys, if you have never heard of Star or Creepy Shit Podcasts, like, you are missing out on the best parts of your life. So you got to listen to it. Her social media platform blew up real quick with good reason, and it was well earned. And her show is as good as the social media stuff. So, Star, I'm a little starstruck, no pun intended, all pun intended. Thank you for being with me on One Good Scare. You probably don't need an introduction, but introduce yourself to our listeners.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for having me. That was such an awesome introduction. So thank you.
Of course.
My name is Star. I am the host of Creepy Shit Podcast, where we go through true hauntings, paranormal activity, and just basically all the disturbing, real shit that happens in the world. So it's been quite an amazing journey so far, and I'm just really honored to be here as well. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. So right off the bat, I love the name of the show, and I feel like it's an honest name, right? Because there's so much weird stuff, weird shit that goes on in the world that we see, that we sense, right? That we know intuitively, maybe, that we read about all these things and we're like, that's some creepy shit. But to put it on as a show name is different, right? Because like I remember when I was coming up with the Red Tree House, I was like, oh, I want something that's kind of, meaningful to me in some sense, but like also gonna like pull listeners in if they came across like, oh, what's the Red Treehouse? But in my head, I'm thinking like, this is like the scariest shit that I could find gathered in this one place, right? So I want you to join me. So I love the name. I appreciate that it's an honest name because there's some creepy shit out there that needs to be explored and talked about. And so, what caused you to pick that name in particular?
So kind of a funny story, but not really, in my true ADHD fashion. So I was serving and like researching all these different names. I had a ton of different names like lined up for the show, and every time I'd go to research, it was like, oh, it was taken. Oh, it was taken. I'm like, oh, I'm not that clever. Oh, I'm not that original. Okay. And then all of a sudden, it literally came out of pure frustration. It totally did. I was like, fine, forget it. Just call it creepy shit and give it the end of the day. And
I mean, it's
like,
terrific.
And then I kept coming back to that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, that actually kind of works. I'm like, I'm going to go with it. So, yeah.
It's pretty perfect. I remember too going through like, you go to these websites like podcast name generator kind of thing. And you're like, I don't know that I want this name, but I'm looking just for like that little spark of inspiration. Like, is this going to spark some ingenuity in my brain? And it didn't, and so I remember not born out of frustration. I actually was, having a random conversation with my daughter, like, oh, I'm trying to figure out this name. I can't figure it out. I don't know what to do with it. She's like, well, what's the last horror movie you watched? And I said, well, I watched Hereditary a couple days ago. She's like, well, what's an important part of that movie? And I was like, well, there is a red treehouse in the movie where like the most pivotal scenes in the movie take place. She's like, Dad, you should call it the Red Treehouse. And so I was like,
genius.
13-year-old daughter was like, the
it's
electricity was
amazing
running.
how they do that. Because I'm a mom, of course, too. And like, yep, it's so crazy how I'm like, like, girl, you're smart. Like,
and it comes to them almost in like this instant where it's like, oh yeah, this is lightning in a bottle. You should do this. And it's like, you have no idea how long I've tried and spent and written down names and put them through a generator, and I've come up with nothing. And here you are 30 seconds later with it, right?
Yeah.
So creepy shit. I love it. I think it's amazing. I was telling Star this before we started recording that I was sort of on the early train of her social media platform. And I remember following really early on, and then it felt like a week or two later, like things were just moving very quickly. And I feel a sense of pride that I was lucky enough to catch on early.
Yes. So, and you are so are. And like the fact, like, I love the fact I always call like people who join in like on my comments and all of that, and it's like just building this community. And I'm like yeah. I know who my OGs are, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and that's not to naysay anybody new that comes on, because I love when the new people come on, without a doubt. So, but it's just really cool to like know exactly who's been there from the very beginning. Like, that's just it's a really cool like foundation to see, and like know like, yeah, like, wow, look at that, like, and still here, and we're still talking, and we're still friends, and that's just so cool.
I like the idea of community building here, because really that's what it is, right? I mean, I know there's, and I'm not disparaging this at all, I know that there are folks who sort of collect followers, and that's a way to go about social media for sure. It's a valid way. But I think there's something to be said for building community with creators who are in the same sphere, maybe the same space, but and they're doing their own thing. And I know in some sense, right? I have a podcast, you have a podcast, others have, like, there is competition in that sense, right? We're all vying for listenership, that kind of thing. But I really think like the collaborative part of it is super important, right? Because
Oh,
it's sort of the foundation.
100%. 100%. Like, it's so, I have never been one to, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I think we all get into a comparison game at some point in
Sure.
time in the process, without a doubt. But at the same time, I am such a firm believer that it's not just one person at the top, it's many at the top. And I want
Sure.
to see everybody succeed. Like there's no reason why we can't. Like,
Right.
just because someone else might, like, it's so weird to even say, because there's really no, like, levels, in my opinion, but yeah, how you can kind of get stuck, like, oh man, like, they're doing so great, and all of that, but it's like, okay, maybe, but there's also so much more behind it, and there's still
Right.
room to grow. There's always, I don't know if I'm totally making sense on that, but, like, yeah, I just think everybody deserves room, and there
Yeah.
is room for everybody. There
I
is.
agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think, the space is the table is so big and there's so many
Mhm.
seats, right? And
Yep.
there are shows who are maybe have been running longer that take up maybe more space at that table, so to speak, right? They've just been more
Mhm.
established, that kind of thing. But I mean, it's okay to like nudge elbows.
Well,
Like,
exactly.
like
And
let's
if you
sit
guys,
together.
if you can do, like you're saying, like a cross collaborative, well, that is a great way, because it's so open that way, and then it's more honest too. So it's
Mm,
almost like an honest review of a
yeah.
firsthand experience. And I think that goes a long way, because, you know, in any podcast duo situation where you're cross collaborating, that podcast doesn't know your audience all the way.
Sure.
There might be some crossover there, but not much,
Sure.
and vice versa. And then that's how it grows. Like, that's
Yeah.
how it actually happens. And if people are super closed off and are like, no, I don't want that. Okay, that's fine that you don't want that. But the growth process then might be that much more challenging for you in the future.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's right. For sure. It's interesting. I get every so often, doesn't happen too frequently, but every couple weeks I'll get a DM from a show host saying, or someone who wants to start a show. Um and there's usually like this, hey, from a podcaster to a podcaster, it's like, hey, you don't need the preface, like, I'm as human as you are. Just,
yeah.
hey, it's nice to meet you. Like,
Yes, exactly.
I'm glad, like, you reached out. And there's always this hesitancy in the question, whatever the question is, right? What are
Mhm,
your thoughts on like social media engagement? How do you build listenership? That kind of thing. It's like,
mhm.
hey, you just ask the question. Like, I'm an open book. I'm not
Yep,
going to not give you an honest answer.
yep.
And I can tell you what works for me. I can't promise that it's going to work for you, but here's, as best
Right.
I know it, here's what little nuggets of wisdom I might have over 3 years of doing this, which is not a ton of time either, you know?
Right.
And it always saddens me a little bit when the response from that person, from the person who asked the question, is always like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it's like, I wonder if maybe they've been turned away or if someone has responded unkindly in those things. Like, if you have questions, ask me. Like, if I have questions, I'm going to reach out to someone who might have answers. And
Mhm.
I think the space is really primed for good collaborative work if
Yeah. And
people are on board with it.
I'll definitely say, like, coming into the whole paranormal world, and really, like, allowing myself to get to know people in the community, I have been blown away by the generosity, the
Yeah.
acceptingness of it all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just, like, blown away. Like, I love the community, like, seriously love the community. I can't say enough for how welcoming people have been.
Yeah.
Like, it's been just chef's kiss, like, seriously.
I love it.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm with you. I remember when I first started the Red Tree House, I was like, I don't know anybody. I'm coming in cold.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a nobody with no platform, no listeners. You know, I
Same.
think the first 5 listeners were all family members, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I almost felt like a smartass, like, oh, look, I'm here now, like, you know.
Mhm.
And at first, I initially like expected this bristle, like people would bristle at that, and it was just, hey, it's nice to meet you. Let's, you know, and it has been that for almost 3 years now with the show, and it's been great. I mean,
That's so
just
awesome.
being able to talk to regular people who are as passionate about the same topics and same things that you are, and who do it
Yes.
differently, who have a different angle on the show that they do or the work that they
Right.
do, and it's like there's something really really beautiful about the tapestry here of shows that are sort
Yes.
of woven together, you know. So
100% agree.
all right, so all of that to say, guys, if you're interested in starting a show, do it. Just do it. And
Yes.
welcome to the fold. And reach out if you have questions or you want help or advice or community or whatever it is. If you're just looking for a conversation, reach out. There's so many good folks in this community that love this kind of stuff. As much as we love the show, we love the collaborative part of it. So definitely do that. All right, Star. So as is customary. Yeah. I'm gonna have to edit that out because I can't figure out my words. I always have the special guest pick the movie we discuss. Um, and you picked a movie that I haven't seen probably in 20 years. And I'm glad that you picked it because it feels right for the time that we live in. Some of the themes in this movie are perfectly aligned with the chaos in the United States right now. So we're going to be discussing The Craft, right? Like that's our movie. I'm curious though, what made you pick it?
Oh, because I can be totally like honest and straightforward, right? Like that's totally cool.
100%. Just
Because
be you. Yep.
every now and again, I love a crazy bitch. Like seriously. Like and oh my god, Fairuza Banks, man,
Uh-huh.
she knew the assignment and she just
For sure.
nailed it. So, and I love it. That's kind of like a little bit in the same category of like the whole crazy bitch thing. Like, that's why I also love Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn.
Yep.
Understands the assignment, like 100%. And Fairuza was the same way. And she was like, honestly, I remember her being kind of like my first crazy bitch, you know, like she was the reason I found like a new age spirit store and started buying candles and tarot, like the whole 9 yards, you know.
I respect it. I respect it for sure. You know, it's interesting. Obviously, guys, if you've never seen The Craft, you've heard part one where I walk through the movie scene by scene. It's obviously a female cast, a stellar female cast, right? And the movie deals with themes like, oh, you know, feminism, rage against the, you know, feminist rage, right? Feminine rage, getting rid of the patriarchy. Those kinds of things are definitely inherent within the film, rightly so. It's interesting for me as a cisgender male, right? Watching this movie and responding to the themes in the movie and what I'm watching. And it's very different for, you know, folks of other genders who may come at it from a different sort of perspective. So, Star, I'm super curious. What themes in the movie stuck out to you? And how do you respond to them now as a grown adult versus maybe, let's say, the first time you watched it when you were younger?
Oh gosh, there's certain parts where I'm like, so the whole part where not it's not Bonnie, because Bonnie is the girl who has the scars, and of course she becomes like all like wonderful and glorious and beautiful. And for some reason, I think a lot of that too, when I was at that age, I definitely gravitated to that, into the girl,
Okay.
you know, the Marsha Brady that like picked on you. And all of
Sure.
that, and like think. And I remember being in those situations, and like, yeah, you so had it coming. Like, like karma's a pain in the ass, and then looking at it now, it's like, well, okay, you could totally go about that a different way. Like, you mature in so many ways, you know what I
Sure.
mean? So it's like, it from a vanity standpoint, to a like uh to actually like seeing and maturing yourself in all the ways,
Sure.
I think. Yeah, yeah.
That's fair. I, so being 100% honest, I think the first time I watched this movie, I was a teenager. I think I was maybe 13, 14 years old when it came out, somewhere in there. And I just remember as a teenage boy thinking, man, those women are beautiful. Like,
Mhm.
and so there was that, right? And so, teenage boy mind being what it is, there was
Mhm.
definitely that like the physical attraction on the screen.
Oh,
Now as
totally.
a
All four of those women are
I
absolutely
mean, just
gorgeous.
yeah, for sure,
Mhm.
without a doubt. And then now as I'm about to be 42 here in a couple months. I see the movie obviously with different eyes, in a different light.
Mhm.
And there's a part of me that finds them all to be villains, not in the evil way, but
Yeah.
obviously they're using witchcraft and magic for their own gain.
Yep.
There's some
A lot of
consequences that come with
selfishness
that.
going on.
Yeah, for sure. So when I say sympathetic villains, I mean it in that sense that maybe their motivations might be purer than their actions, right? Definitely
Mhm.
purer than the results of those actions. I sort of applaud them
Yes.
at this point. Like, just some of the things they endure that sort of lead them down that path, to me,
Mhm.
it screams, it's almost a cry for justice in a sense.
Mhm.
And that's something that really resonates with me as a 40 something year old, adult now versus a,
Yeah.
13, 14-year old kid back then. Um, so I really appreciated that. I'm with you. Fruza Balk is insane in this movie,
Mhm.
but I feel like she had like a string of movies in the mid to late 90s, right? It was what was it? American History X, The Craft.
Mhm.
She was in The Waterboy, where she was just borderline unhinged, and it played
Yes,
perfectly. Every role was played perfectly.
it
So
was.
she needs to come back, and we're waiting
Right? Yes, no
impatiently.
kidding.
So here's a question for you. I'm a parent. I've got teenagers.
Yep.
You're a parent.
Yep.
How do you see the movie relating to your kids, or how do you think your kids would relate to it now, 30 years after the fact?
Oh, well, my daughter is too young at this point for that movie, which but I know, she's going to watch it. I know she will, because I've already got her hooked into many of the movies that my husband and I loved as
Uh-huh.
kids. So I know, I'm like, yeah, I'm totally going to get her there, and she's already interested. Like, I usually have like a deck of cards, and fun little story. Like, I got her used to being okay with like the idea of ghosts.
Yeah.
So I made up this total bullshit story at some point, and bless her heart, she went with it, because I'm mom.
It's
So,
awesome.
but now it's like this thing, and now I think, like, if and when that movie comes, I think she's going to be one of those people who will take it all in and really be like, well, now I want to know more about that. Like, it's almost going to be, I could see that becoming almost like a hyperfixation, but not
Okay.
like, I don't mean that like in a negative way.
Sure.
Like, I think
Sure.
it's going to be something that will really interest her, and she just wants to know about it, not
Sure.
necessarily like become Nancy or anything. You know?
Sure.
But
I mean, it's almost like a bridge of sorts.
like,
You
almost
know.
from a cultural standpoint of
Sure.
understanding it. And
Sure.
to which I'd be like, absolutely, broaden your horizons, like know the knowledge, see what you think. Mhm.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've got three teenagers, and my daughter is super sensitive to spooky stuff.
Okay.
Definitely is not listening to creepy shit. Any creepy shit, mine or anybody's. It's the kind of thing where, like, even the boat ride scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory freaks her out, and so super sensitive. Got a really
And
sort
that
of
is really weird,
intuitive spirit.
though. It is a
It is
really
very
weird
weird.
scene.
My theory is that Willy Wonka is actually a horror movie disguised as a kids musical.
I
For
think
sure.
so, which almost makes it that much more creepier. Like, I could
Oh, it's so
absolutely see
sinister.
it. It is super
It's my
dark.
favorite. It's my favorite movie of all time, and it
Is
is
it?
sinister.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the only
love it.
musical I can really sit through for more
I can
than 10
understand
minutes in a row. Yeah. So,
that.
but my boys are like, they're into this stuff at different levels and in different ways, right? Each one of them
Mhm.
is sort of has his own interest level. And so for them, whenever we watch a certain movie that they've never seen before, I remember we watched Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street recently with them. I always tell them, look, there's a before this moment and an after this moment, and
Yep.
you're before we sit down to watch it, you're always welcome to say, I'm not going to do it. And afterwards, like if there's things that come up or questions you have, like we definitely want to sit down and talk through it and process through it. And I could see that certain movies being maybe sparking an interest in
Yep.
things that are sort of unknown right now, and so
Yep.
I definitely think there's like they haven't seen The Exorcist yet. And I every so often I float it like, hey, you guys want to watch it? And my youngest, who's like doesn't give a shit about anything, he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do it. I'm like, okay, that's too much. Like, we're not doing that. Like, you need to have some caution, bro. Like, come on now.
Like, won't
And
say
then
no, and no fear whatsoever.
oh man, like if I gave him the keys to the car right now and said, dude, drive to the grocery store and pick up a gallon of milk, he at 13, he'd be like, all right, I'll be right back.
Uh-huh.
And who the hell knows what happens between now and then?
Right.
But we're constantly telling them, like, if there's anything, because my wife is into tarot and that kind of thing, and so we're just constantly having these conversations with them. So I can definitely respect and even appreciate that your approach there.
Yeah, thank you.
What's interesting though, Star, is that I again I was a teenager in that era, right?
Yep, ditto.
And I remember, and you may remember also, some of the backlash that this movie sparked. The sort of we were coming right out of the Satanic Panic in the late 80s, early 90s, right?
Yep.
The rise of sort of conservative Christianity was sort of responding to those things, right? Hitting the mainstream in that sense.
Yep.
And so there was a lot of questions about censorship in media in general, right? With music and shows and that kind of thing.
Yes.
I remember, Tipper Gore with her, NWA stuff. And,
Yep.
all of those things happened within a few years of this movie coming out. And so for The Craft to come out I remember also Practical Magic came out and The Witches of Eastwick came out around that same time. Those were more comedy, right? But The Craft was a pretty serious movie. Like, it had a serious
Yeah.
head on its shoulders, right?
Yep.
And so I remember for me as a kid, like, you're not watching that. You're not, and of course, when you tell me no at that age, I'm like, okay, well, why? Like, now I need to watch it to find out why I can't
Right.
watch
Like,
it.
well, now I gotta know, and now you just poked the bear, and I'm gonna go with my friends and tell you I'm at a sleepover.
Right. That's exactly right. And, no cell phones at the time, so like, well, you got to call
Oh,
a
you could get
landline.
away
And
with anything back
oh
then.
God,
Like,
listen,
totally.
it's amazing that any of us survived the
Oh,
90s, the 80s and 90s.
seriously, it's a wonder that I'm not laying in a ditch with a bottle of Boone's Farm. I'm not kidding you. Like,
Seriously,
honestly.
like my kids are so spoiled. They've got, they all have cell phones and this and
Yeah.
that. It's like, guys, like, if you didn't, if you had a cell phone, you weren't making calls before 9 p.m. and you weren't texting because they were expensive.
Yep,
you know.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
And our
Lord.
cell phones were huge, like they were
I know
massive.
they
Like,
weighed so much. Like you'd
oh,
sit in
they
your
weighed a
pocket and your pants
ton.
would slouch. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, these kids. Ah, these kids. Like I feel like an old
Right?
man.
They don't even know.
But do you remember experiencing any of, or hearing about any of the backlash to this movie, or sort of the response? Maybe not backlash, but the response to this movie releasing in the mid '90s when it did.
Um, Vaguely I recall that. I vaguely recall that the movie would and this could have even been part of like their marketing gimmick too, about
Mm.
how you'll end up, being in a cult, so you're going to end up, having a coven and all of this kind of stuff, and you
Yeah,
know and and I can see part of that being a marketing ploy, like
yeah,
without a doubt. But I that's I don't remember a whole lot, but I kind of remember that.
yeah. It sort of felt like I remember being a teenager and the concern being exposure, right?
Hmm.
We need to, if there's anything that you're exposed to, it needs to be along these lines and it needs to be kept away from these lines. And the craft was very clearly on the we're not exposing you to that. Which is ironic though, because like I owe my like obsession with creepy shit to my dad, who when I was a kid, even younger than, my teenage years, 6, 7, 8 years old. Oh, I said 6, 7. My kids are gonna flip when they hear. I take it back,
Like,
guys. My apologies to everybody listening. I'm sorry. um, I remember at 7, 8, 9 years old, sitting on the front stoop listening to my dad and grandfather tell scary stories about
yeah.
demons and ghosts and UFOs and all this stuff, right? And so it's like, to me in my brain, I'm thinking, but this is just a movie. Like dad and grandpa, they're talking about real stuff. This is just a movie. What's the big deal? And
Uh,
it wasn't until much later that I learned that apparently these things were conduits for evil, malevolent, bad, demonic, hellish stuff to come into your life, apparently.
yeah.
In fairness, I have experienced more hellish stuff come into my life watching Fox News or listening to Fox News or than any other horror movie combined. So take that for
Right.
what it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. I realize it may be difficult to pin down a specific character, but do you have a favorite character in the film?
Oh, that is a hard one. And honestly, it would probably go to Nancy. Now, if you
Okay.
would have
Okay.
asked me back in the 90s, it would have been
Yep.
totally different.
Okay.
It probably would have been Nev.
Yep.
It probably would have been Nev. But now, or even Sarah, because like, the outcast, the new girl in school, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But now, oh, 100%, it hands down. I mean, the Oscar goes to Faruka, because oh my gosh, like she's just so phenomenal. Like,
I respect it. I think for me it was Nev at first because, Bonnie, because Nev was sort of the it girl at that time, right? Scream had
she
just come out.
was,
I mean, it was like,
and she had Party of Five at that
Party of
point,
Five. Yeah. I don't think
and
people even remember Party of Five.
I
Ah,
know, and then there was, and I think if my timeline is right, I'm pretty sure that Craft happened before Scream happened,
I believe it did.
because I think Craft was like 93, 94, and then I think was Scream 95, 96.
So let's see. I'm going to try and look it up and try and
Well,
make this as smooth as I can. All right. So The
we're,
Craft released on May 3rd, 1996.
oh, it did.
And,
Okay.
Scream released December 20th, 1996. So it did precede Scream by a couple months.
So, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Right
yeah.
on. But my years are off.
Let's see. What else did she do around that era? Oh, she did Wild Things with Matt Dillon.
Oh, yeah. Was that her and
Uh,
Megan Fox? Who was
It
that?
was what's her name?
Denise Richards? Yeah.
She did Scream 2 in 97, which
Yeah.
is still my favorite. Well, not quite my favorite Scream, but close.
Ooh, which one's your favorite Scream?
So I'm always partial to originals in any franchise. It's rare that I find a sequel to be better, with the exception of A Nightmare on Elm Street. I actually think number 3 is the best in the series.
Right on.
Followed by number 1 and then number 2.
Okay.
So
I'm with you on that though. Like the original Scream is my favorite.
Usually,
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, that opening scene is still one of the best 2 or 3 horror movie opening scenes ever to any horror movie.
It's really incredible. And I didn't know that whole situation in that opening scene was actually based on a true event.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it wasn't for real. Like,
yeah,
blew my mind. So, and then the way they did it, I was like, that was really well done. Like, that was really well done.
Did you know? Maybe now we're getting into some creepy shit, which is good.
Yeah.
So, did you know that there was a really tragic case? I want to say 2000. I don't remember what it was. Maybe 2007, 2008. 2 high school kids murdered their classmate wearing Scream type masks, and they were apparently motivated by the Scream films, the franchise.
Really?
The audio recordings were them partly talking about, it's going to be just like in Scream and it's going to be awesome. And like they ended up actually, I mean, it was savage. What they did was savage. And I think they were both sentenced to life.
Okay.
And, but yeah, the movie is one of my favorites.
Yes.
But it has some really tough things like attached to it. Not through no fault of its own, right? People are going to do what people do. But yeah. Kind of creepy horror, real life horror stuff behind the scenes. Yeah. But don't love that.
Yeah, don't love that. I agree.
All right. So I hear, let me look this up too before I talk shit I can't take back. I hear they're making a part 2 to The Craft.
For real? Why do I feel like I did? Actually, now that you say that, I'm like, that sounds like vaguely familiar.
Let's see. So there is one called The Craft Legacy. It doesn't look like it was.
I do remember and I didn't see it because one of my friends who is super, 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 super into horror movies will not miss a release. She's like, don't waste your time. And I'm like, okay.
I see, though, that Fairuza made a cameo appearance in the second one. I don't know to what extent, but okay. Well,
interesting.
There are some movies where I wish they'd made a sequel. This was one of them. And then there are some movies that have multiple sequels that I'm like, you guys should have stopped at
you should have left it alone.
Yeah, for sure. This is okay, Rotten Tomatoes. The Craft Legacy is a terrible sequel. The film tries to reuse the same scenes from the first film, but this time in modern-day versions. Oh, it had no plot whatsoever. In fact, the first 45 minutes was just random shit happening. Scene after scene of some sort of... Okay, so maybe we won't watch that one. But, guys, the original is absolutely worth watching. It's fantastic. It's... I don't say it's a rare gem because it's pretty well known and pretty well loved. But I think given the climate that the movie was released and some of the like movies being a little more on the comedic side, this one was pretty daring and pretty bold in its it had a serious head on its shoulders. So definitely give it a watch. Star, while I have you, it's always a thing I ask, especially if I know a guest is a show host. So inevitably, I have a handful of conversations a month, maybe 2 or 3 conversations a month with folks who reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in starting a show. What's a thing that I need to do or need to know? And I always ask more specific questions like, well, what are you interested in, that kind of thing. But if you could give a hypothetical questioner a general nugget of wisdom about starting a show and or social media, what would that be?
Oh.
And I put you on the spot there.
Right? That's okay. I think I think what happens for a lot of people, just because I've seen it, is I've heard like, man, I wish I could start a podcast. Man, I wish I could do that.
Mm.
You know, how do you do that? None of that. And I think what happens is you get caught up in like this overthinking and analysis paralysis where like you try to find out all the things, but it's one of those things where you're not really going to know until you start doing it. You just
Yeah,
won't.
that's good.
It's just one of those things where you got to teach yourself a lot of the things, and you got to find your rhythm and your workflow and all of that. Like I can tell you it's like you said earlier, like I can tell you everything I do, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for you or that
Right.
it's going to feel good to you to do it that way.
That's
But
right.
you know, I think that's a huge one, and I think it's just really I think the other part of it is sometimes I think people think, oh, I've got to have all this fancy equipment, I got to have all the bells and whistles. No, you don't. You really don't. You probably need a decent headset, a decent mic, and just some software. And it doesn't even need to be fancy software. It really doesn't. It doesn't have to be like top of the line studio quality anything. It can still get the job done, and you don't have to break your financial budget for it,
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's great. It's like, I don't know. I'll confess. I'll offer a confession. Like there's always a part of me that has to work through, like some people have to work through ambivalence when they get started with something. For me, it's the opposite. For me, it's like the delay because I want the best of the best in place before I start the thing. Right. And podcasting was one of those things that I just couldn't afford to do that right out of the gate. It wasn't a reality for me. And so I started with a mid-level mic, right? A
Yep.
cheapo laptop that I already had for
Yep.
years,
Yep.
and free editing software. And it was like that for at least the first year of the show,
Yeah.
And so
100%.
I always tell my biggest piece of wisdom, if you want to call it that, is know your limits,
Yep.
know what you can and can't do. For me, doing 2 episodes a week fits with the way my life is currently set up. But if it wasn't, I wouldn't be able to do 2 episodes a week, right? So know yourself, know your limits, and then know your content, right? Because at the end of the day, people listen to podcasts yes, they want to hear you ramble, but they also want like the substance of what they're there
Yes.
for. So if your topic
Yep.
is X, Y, and Z, then the meat of your episode should be X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And so the audio quality can happen later, right? The
Yes.
increase in the expensive stuff can come down the line if you wanted to, but you can't
Yep.
start out with bad content and work your way to good content. You can start with bad audio and work your way to great audio, but you
Yes.
shouldn't reverse those things.
Yes.
I always use, obviously, morbid podcast is gigantic at this point. Just signed with
Huge.
SiriusXM,
They are
huge.
massive.
But if you listen to like those first 30 or 40 episodes, especially the earliest at 1 through 10, it
Yep.
sounds like they're underwater. Like
Yeah.
they sound
Totally
garbled,
different.
they sound muffled for sure. Now they're recording in probably professional studios, but back then, 7-8
Yeah.
years ago, it was the content that drew you in, that kept you coming back, that gave you that made it okay for you to say this audio sucks, but damn, their content is so good and so worth listening to.
Yep. Like,
So, I'm not morbid,
yes.
guys. I am a small fish in a large pond comparatively, but I feel like those two things have served me well, and I think Star's right too. You just do it too. Just get it done.
Yep.
Get started.
Just get it done. Just go and just start. That's all you got to do is start. Don't worry about everything else. That'll just fall into place. It really will.
It's
just start
100%
researching
true.
something you love, start getting it on paper, and go from there.
Yep, agreed. Wow, Star, it's so good to meet you and have had a
Yes.
conversation with you.
Right.
One of my favorite
Agreed.
things about doing this kind of thing is, if we're not collaborating like this, each of us is just a social media page, right?
Yep.
A video, a past, right? You see the video in present day, but it was recorded whenever it was recorded.
Yep.
And it's so different to like, and I love being able to see the person, hear the person behind the social media presence, behind the podcast, right? And just have a real normal human conversation. It's really
Yeah.
nice. So,
It is. Agreed. I loved it.
well, guys, thank you for listening. Again, if you have not watched The Craft, absolutely encourage you to do it. It really does hold up today, especially considering some of the themes that are there. We live in a pretty volatile society right now, unfortunately, and the movie does deal with some marginalization and some responses to that marginalization that are at least worth understanding and grappling with. So definitely give it a watch. Guys, I don't take it for granted that you're listening to One Good Scare or the Red Treehouse. I am always humbled and blown away when I see some of the numbers that come with, with doing this kind of thing. And I'm like, who the fuck, what, who are these people? Like, where do you come from? Where are you listening? Like, I have all these questions and they'll never have answers to them, but thank you so much. Star, where can listeners find you? Tell them where they can listen and follow you.
Absolutely. I am pretty much, the podcast itself is available on just about any podcast platform you listen to. If you want to hang out with me more often, you can follow me over on Instagram at creepy_shit_podcast. And I do have a TikTok as well, if you want to go there, at creepyhoststar.
Guys, follow, like, subscribe, listen, review positively. I have read so many millions of like 1-star reviews for bad reasons. So I always tell people, leave the 5-star review, but sleep on the 1-star review and then just ignore it the next morning. Don't even like wake up with it.
Exactly.
Just let it go. Just leave
Yeah.
it. So Star, thank you so much for being with us. And it's been a pleasure. It's been all my pleasure. I appreciate that so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's been great. And to those listening, I will catch you next episode. I don't even know what episode I'm doing next, but I'll catch you then on One Good Scare. Y'all take care.